Katie Nimon.
Look, this is hopefully a very simple bill, and I'll cut to the chase. We are going to support this to Select Committee. But there's some really interesting things that I'd like to talk to about this. I have been an employee in private sector, I've been an employee in the public sector, and I've been an employer. And there are so many different circumstances where this plays out both negatively and potentially positively. And so for that reason, I am really interested to see where this goes in terms of public response at Select Committee. One of the points is there are a lot of people out there that have been brought up to not talk about money. It's one of those things. You don't talk about politics, religion and money in some people's upbringings. And so it goes against people's grain to have those conversations. And so for some, that's just taboo. And as the member opposite, and to congratulate Camilla on another member's bill out of the biscuit tin, some just have that luck to have this be coming through in the first reading and then hopefully going to Select Committee to be discussed. Look, some people are in a position where there is a disadvantage. They don't work in an organisation where there are grades, where the grades are really structured, they're really transparent in themselves. You know where you are on the grade, you know why you're there, you know where your steps are, and you could almost make the guess. In some organisations, that's not the case at all. In some organisations, you are sworn to secrecy, as your employment agreement might stipulate, but I have very rarely seen an organisation utilise that. But the problem is, you've got one side where you have obviously women being able to make an advance to get ahead. I've seen examples where women just don't ask for as much as men, and that's another issue we have to deal with altogether. You know, when we're talking about the gender pay gap, women understanding their worth and asking for it is something we've really got to work on. You know, breaking down that stigma of actually I am worth this much, and I can aim higher, and have that sort of ambition that some of our male counterparts have. And so it's really important that we have this opportunity to hear that out and see how this might impact that opportunity. But I've also seen examples where people do use discussing their pay, and as I say, even though this isn't a legal thing to make this not allowed to be in employment terms, people do still discuss their pay as it stands, and some people do it to cause trouble. Some people do it inadvertently. They have no idea it's a term in their contract, and so it is a good opportunity for us to explore how removing it from terms and conditions and people's employment agreements can iron some of that out.
Just sorry to interrupt the member, just letting you know there's 7 minutes left. We're having awful problems with our clocks all night, but mine's fine. I'll give you a 5-minute bell and a 2-minute bell.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I had to talk for 9 minutes 46 forever, but I'm sure we'll be here too late. Look, and I think ultimately when it comes to what we want to get from the Select Committee process is genuinely hear the voices, because as the member intends, this is to help expose that pay gap and put the sunlight as the disinfectant, which is a really great metaphor, but just acknowledging that there would inadvertently be perverse outcomes. And in my experience, what I have seen is in organisations where there are really large skill gaps, but people don't necessarily see that in terms of their experience, in terms of their, maybe it's reliability, maybe it's commitment, maybe it's all sorts of things that are the reason that somebody has an additional $1 or so an hour. Thank you very much. And so, like I was saying before, our little time debacle, there are occasions where people use that as a troublemaking tool, so to create dissent, to stir the pot. And then there are some people that absolutely inadvertently and for very good intention will talk to their colleagues about what they're earning, to understand whether they're getting paid what they think they're worth, and comparing and contrasting based on experience, based on skill, based on roles, and based on workload. And so, there are really two sides to this, and like I say, I'm really excited to hear from people, and do implore when we go through the Select Committee process and this gets opened, and I'm sure that will be in the sort of coming weeks, days or weeks, that we do get a good broad number of contributions, because we don't just want to hear from businesses, we don't just want to hear from the unions, and we don't just want to hear from women, we don't just want to hear from Pacifica, we want to hear from a really good representation of all those that will be impacted, because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a term that it may be in people's agreements for archaic reasons, absolutely, like I acknowledged in the beginning of my contribution. It is a very old school terminology to say we don't talk about money, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about religion. But what would happen if we did talk about it? And so I'm really interested to see that. Look, I think one of the things that we need to consider is why is it that we don't share our pay, our salary, our hourly wage? What is it that is in people's employment agreements for? And so we've seen so many organisations going towards having pay grades, having stepped approaches, having a really structured rule, having internal policies as to gender and ethnicity and those salaries, and that is a voluntary commitment from organisations. Would this see more people going towards that? Because, obviously, you're being proactive rather than reactive, waiting for someone to come to you as an employee to raise their remuneration with you in an unfair way, perhaps, in comparison to your colleagues. But it's not to take away from independent negotiation, and that's something I do want to mention. Of course, we do believe in the power of the independent employment agreement, and so there still needs to be the ability for employees and employers to negotiate. And I think that while what we will hear from contributors, and I don't want to speculate, but I'm sure there will be confidence that can still be achieved through this process. So look, I think from my perspective, having been employed, having been in the public sector, having been in the private sector, it really does come down to the culture of the workplace. It comes down to the structure of the remuneration. It comes down to whether you have an HR department or whether you're owner-operator. And all of these things do make every business different. And so while, sometimes having legislation that sort of makes blanket rules isn't always the best approach, I think in some cases, like I say, where we have some archaic rules and regulations that have just been in place, culture has changed, times have changed. I just hope that there won't be sort of perverse outcomes that come from this, but again, that's what we hopefully will draw out. I think we have a good amount of opportunity as a house, if there is enough support to push out to our communities, to the people we know, to really make sure their voice is heard on this, because there will be some people who might be afraid of the pressure that they might feel to share their salary or their wage with their colleagues, and what that might look in terms of competition or judgment. And so I think these are the things that we've got to consider. It will be sensitive for some people, but it'll be an amazing opportunity for others. And, I know obviously as a woman, you do have a big battle to convince people of your worth in some places and occasions, and industries, particular industries, can be very difficult. I myself have worked in the transport industry. It's a predominantly man's world. And so, there are all sorts of things that women do feel that they have to do to make themselves, on that same level, or at least feel on the same level, whether it's additional study or more hours or whatever else it might be that you feel gives you those credentials. And so, if this becomes that levelling tool, then that's a wonderful thing. And so I do really look forward to, like I said, hearing from businesses, hearing from employers in all different sectors and all different spaces, whether it's public sector or private sector, if that's something that we can achieve, and employees as well, both those on independent agreements and those on collective agreements, I'm sure, and I can't speak for collective agreements to the same that I can independent, but, I'm sure that there is a bit more understanding of what some colleagues are earning, given that those are collective in some respects. And of course, we do have some industries where they have particular rates of pay that do exist under arrangement. And so, look, I'm sure that we will iron that out in due course. Something that, as I said, as a party, we're looking forward to supporting this to Select Committee and really hearing those voices, and do hope that we get considerable contribution from the public so that we can really see how this stands up and what people's views are. And so on that, commend this bill to the House.
Well, I think that's very much summed it up from Katie Nimon.
I'm really glad to see that they're open-minded about it and go, look, there could be people who have problems, but there could be people who,
I wonder if Camilla went to a lot of work to try and convince at least getting it across the line for first reading. And it does feel that that's something she would do, is going through there. Like, I do know that she is going through at the moment. The wage theft bill I have read on there has been suspended until February for its next stage. And I wonder if that is to work through the things to get New Zealand First to support it at third reading.
Possibly.
I think I really appreciate her contribution there, because she's right. There's a lot of families out there, and there's a lot of people, especially in more rural conservative areas, where you just don't talk about money. You don't talk about politics. You don't talk about religion. You don't talk about these taboo subjects because it's inappropriate or for whatever reason. So I think it's very good to have these open discussions and allow a lot of people to do it. I think there's a lot of people, it really helped to have Laura here, because it's about, a woman fighting.
She would be absolutely brilliant right now, but I do think she would be in a scaly voice situation.
Yeah. And I think, with National, right, there's always two sides to them. There's a very liberal side, and not very liberal, but there's a liberal side and there's a conservative side of National. And I think, you're seeing the liberal side in this instance winning out here. And I think they've got a good perspective on this, because, if with the liberal and the conservative side, you can understand the two perspectives there on trying to open up and trying to talk about these more taboo topics, whilst also, having these more conservative people, who might come from those backgrounds where, you might not talk about, those money and about, the religion and politics and stuff like that. So I think it's really good National supporting this bill, because it really shows the perspective that, someone might miss when something is blatantly obvious like this bill that needs to be passed through, because there is another perspective there. It's just one you might not instantly think about when hearing this.